G'day viewers, welcome to the 323 class in Northern Livery on the Glossop Hadfield Manchester line, or it could be the Manchester Glossop Hadfield or the Manchester Hadfield Glossop. I've seen all three, doesn't really matter. But I thought I'd do a 323 tutorial even though we've seen the 323 before, and it is the same as the one that's on Birmingham Cross City, because maybe you don't have that route, you've never experienced it, and you're getting this one and you're looking for a bit of help. So we're going to do this tutorial as you normally find them in the game, which is pantographs up and powered on. So this isn't a cold and dark. So first up, wander up to the door, click on it or use your controller, whatever works for you on your platform. Find the right spot for step up. It's interesting how sometimes it's step up and sometimes it's climb up. Close the door with the cab door close button. And the first thing you always want to do is sit in the chair, because that takes control of the train. Next up is our master key. So I'm on PC, I use Control W to put that in and turn it on. You could use the equivalent button on Rail Driver or use your controller depending on your platform. Next up, let's set our headlights. Now in this case they're actually okay. So we've got tail lights off and headlights on day head. You might need to put them on night head sometimes if it's playing at night time. I haven't found a situation where the lights at the back of the train are wrong, but if you want to flick down there, you always can and have a look as part of your gameplay. Alright, this one the brakes are always cut in and you've got a combined power and brake handle or brake controller. So there's only one handle that does braking in the top part of the travel and power in the bottom part of the travel. We've also got our reverser over here, which we'll come back to in a moment. We have got wiper controls, which are down here. There we go, wiper controls. So if you need your wipers turned on, you can, and they'll eventually move. There we go, squeech, squeech, because it's dry. And we've got our GSMR. Very important to turn this on at the start of your trip, because this is what you use if you need to contact the signaller. In a lot of previous trains, they've used one or both of the telephone handsets to do that job, but in this one we use SG, the button on the GSMR. Alright, we also can open our windows if we want to. And we have got some blinds that we can pull down. When you're stabling, you should actually close these blinds completely. And you can pop them up as your needs dictate for sunlight, if you don't like the sun right in your face. Okay then, let's next up set our direction. So I'm going to use the reverser. I'm actually going to use the rail driver to do this. So I've popped it into forwards. You can also use the W and S keys on your keyboard, or you can use the up and down buttons on your controller. Okay, now the next thing I want to turn on is the safety systems, because I do use them and I encourage you to as well. The first one is AWS, which we will turn on, and we have to acknowledge that. I acknowledge that with the Q key, or you can use the alert button on Rail Driver, or circle, or B for your console controller, circle for PlayStation, B for Xbox. Emergency bypass does nothing, PCIS does nothing, TIS does nothing, and vigilance is another one that you can turn on, where every now and again the train will sound a tone and you have to respond to it or the train will stop. And DSD isolation is already on, that's in normal. That means if you're moving and you stand up, the train will stop. Okay. Next up, I want to talk about doors. So if you're going to open the doors from up here, you can just use your normal keyboard buttons, the Y and U to open the doors, or you can use your left and right controller to open doors, and you can use left and right on the Rail Driver D-pad as well. If you want to use the buttons in here, put your door key on. Your left buttons are here, and your right buttons are here. There's another set of right buttons over there. This train does feature a guard mode, but we won't go into that in this tutorial. So let's say I open the right-hand doors. You can see the brakes have now fully applied. They've just gone up to 4 on the gauge there. And we've got a red door interlock light, which means that we know we can't drive. We've also got a red box on the HUD. So if we close our doors now, and we've got VC going off at the same time, so I've just acknowledged that. There we go, and now we've got a white door interlock light, which means we can drive. We also have DRA, so if you're facing a red signal, when you come to a stand, you should turn on the DRA, and that isolates your controller again so that you can't drive. And when the signal becomes okay for you to proceed, I'm trying to use words that work for anybody, you can turn off the DRA and then you'll be able to drive again. Alright, so if we put our power and brake controller into notch 1, we will start moving forward slowly. Notch 2, notch 3, and notch 4. And if we want to come to a stand, we go back to through the off position to brake step 1 is first. And you'll notice that the air brake went up to 1 bar initially, and it's flicking around a little bit. And we've popped into brake notch 2 then, because the rail drive is a little bit sensitive as well. And what you'll discover is the air comes on and off, comes on and off, comes on and off, until you stop, and then it comes to a final stand, and it'll go on to whatever step you've got set. The reason for that is this train has electro-pneumatic brakes, which means that you can brake, and it's using regenerative brakes and the air brakes, and the train will take care of that by itself. Now, if you get into an emergency brake situation, so you can either pop it into the E notch on the power and brake controller, or you can press these buttons, either that one or the one over here, or backspace on your keyboard. That will give you an emergency brake. Releasing from it on this train is actually really easy. You just go back to the off position and the brakes will release and you can drive again. Now I'm just going to let this thing crawl along, and if VC stops us, I'm just going to let it do it so I can show you how to recover. I'm just going to stop accelerating now. We're being naughty, we're running through a set of points, but fortunately it's the kind that just flip over for you. You don't want to run through a locked set of points, you'll destroy them. You may even put yourself in the dirt, and that would be tedious. Just crawling along, waiting for VC to happen, not touching any controls because that resets the timer. And I'm ignoring that the thing wants me to stop. Still just cruising out through this yard. There it is. VC's finally happening, and we're coming into the head shunt as well, so there we go. VC has put on the brakes and is stopping the train. So VC, or vigilance control, is something that makes sure you're awake. So to reset that, you can press the alert button on rail driver, Q on the keyboard, or you press B on the Xbox controller or circle on PlayStation. And once you acknowledge it, the brakes will automatically release. This is a nice easy train to drive. And you can just proceed as normal. Just to prove that, we'll just move up again, even though we're going into a head shunt. And we'll go up into the head shunt there, and I'll shut this train down as though we were going to be stabling it. And I will come back later on in a different position in the train to show you how to react to AWS. Alright, so put it into brake notch 3, put your reverser into the off position, put your tail lights on and put your headlights off. If you had any other systems turned on, you should turn them off, so we turned on AWS. Most of the time you can actually leave these on, but there's the occasional train that it's not happy with, so I just put them back to the way they were when I found them. Let's close our blinds, because this is something we're supposed to do when we're stabling. And then we can take out our master key down here. Oh, we've got our door key in too. Let's take our... I want to take my door key out. There we go. So then stand up and get out. Just jump out of there. Good health and safety. And we'll close that up. And we'll come back later on and I'll show you the AWS portion. That starts our tutorial with acknowledging the vigilance that just came up then while we're sitting at the Hadfield station platform. A lot of trains don't give you a vigilance if you're not moving with the brakes on. This one does. It's almost time for our departure. You'll notice I'm sitting in brake step 3. Time to go, so let's lock the doors. I've used the U key on the keyboard to do that, but you can use your local controls. Alright, let's accelerate away from here. It's only a 10-mile-an-hour limit in this area. Sorry, 15 by the looks. So you don't want to go too hard. And coming up just around the corner here, we'll see a fixed signal with an AWS magnet. We'll acknowledge that one. And then as we come into Glossop a little later on, I've just got to maintain my speed here because we've got a downhill gradient of 1%. When we come into Glossop a little later on, I'll not acknowledge that one and we'll see what happens. We've got a speed sign down here on our left for 40 miles an hour. That applies when you are approaching the sign. If the speed's going down, it applies from the front of your train. And if the speed's going up, it applies from the back of your train. So when the back passes it. Here we go. I'll acknowledge the AWS. I used the Q key, but you can use circle on your PlayStation or B on your Xbox or the alert button on your rail driver. And they will all work. We can accelerate now, up to 40 mile an hour. It'll be a short-lived speed run though, because we have to come down to 10 for the curve. Because we're not going into Dinting, no, we're going to Glossop. So this signal coming up here, that's a green signal, and you can see the lit up off to the left there, and the white lights, which are telling us that we have to go around the loop to Glossop. Because at this point the game may choose for you to go to Dinting if you started your run at Glossop, or it may choose for you to go to Glossop if you started your run at Hadfield. So we've got a slow right down for these points. Don't be afraid of doing some hard braking. This is a commuter line. You've got to make a timetable. There we go. I can just crawl around this curve, just give it a little bit of power, just to pick it up just a touch. Not too much though. It's best to be just under the limit rather than right on it. The game's fairly generous, so you can creep over the limit by a mile or so and it won't matter. But if you creep over it by a lot, you may find yourself being penalised in points. And with some trains you may find yourself getting a penalty brake application, but not the 323, it doesn't have speed protection. And that is what we're driving right now. So we get to cruise along at the incredibly exciting speed of 10 miles an hour, which is pretty amazing. Back when trains first came along, people thought they would actually die if they went over 10 miles an hour because they wouldn't be able to breathe. Down on our left coming up now is another speed sign for 25, closely followed by another one. This is an early access version, hopefully there won't be two of them when this goes live. Should say thank you to the folks at Dovetail for providing this DLC so I can make these tutorials for you. There we go, we've gone up to 25 so I can accelerate now just as I braked back under the 10. Knocking off the power before we get up to our target speed so that we try and avoid going over the target speed. Got another speed board coming up. This one says 25 and 45 together, but I believe 45 is the one you should read. Again, this is an early access version, so hopefully you won't see that. And we're allowed up to 45 for our short run round to Glossop. It's a very short-lived run though before we have to get back down to 10 mile an hour again. Now this time round, when we see the fixed signal coming into Glossop, I'm not going to acknowledge the AWS. Here's the magnet here. And I'm not acknowledging. There's the fixed signal on there on the left on the board. They'd use a display board like this because the signal can't be anything but red. So when this happens to you, go into break step 3, acknowledge the AWS, and then come back to off and just wait for the traction interlock to clear. It takes a while. There's a timer that happens now. It's about a minute. There's really not much you can do to speed it up. There might be one trick though. Shall we try it? Put the reverser into off and back into forwards, and look at that. Off we go. So you can wait for a minute, or you can cheat and turn the train off and turn it back on again. It's amazing how many things that works for, really. Alright, let's speed up again. We'll only go up to about 20 or so, because we have to slow down to the blistering speed of 10 miles an hour to come into the platform, which is here. Remember, the new speed when you're going down in speed applies from the front of your train, so we have to get down to 10 now and crawl our way in. And when we get down here, I'll show you how to change ends. There's not much to it. It's a fairly simple procedure in the 323. A few things to turn off. Come down into the platform until it's the right place to stop down near the end here. Try not to hit the buffers. Little bites of the cherry on the brakes. That should do that. Alrighty, so let's get our doors unlocked and we can start changing ends. This service might actually end, so we may have to go back to free roam, but that's okay. So put it into break step 3. So after that service is completed, I've returned to free roam to change ends. So let's get on with that. Let's turn off the GSMR, and we will turn off the AWS. You don't strictly have to turn these off, but on some of the trains it causes an issue, so I've just gotten into the habit of doing it. Yes, I want you to deregister. Go away. Put your reverser into the off position. And you've already got brake step 3 selected on the other handle. Then you want to check if your door key's in. It's not, so we can just take out our master key. Now if you're stabling, you would close these. Doesn't matter too much on the train. You want your tail lights on and your headlights off. And let's get up and get out of here. Just flick that round. And we've definitely got tail lights on and headlights off, so we've got to the other end of the train now. Just open up the door, kick this person out, and set up ready to go. Get out of my chair. Alright, close doors, get our master key in. I'm using Control W, use what works for you on your controller. We want to turn on the GSMR at this end, and we want to turn on our AWS and our vigilance, and turn off our tail lights, put our headlights on day head, put our reverser into forward, acknowledge the AWS warning, and that's about it. We're ready to go. So we can lock the doors. release the brakes and take some power and get out of here as we leave Glossop, heading back out to Dinting. Of course, I'm going just a little bit quick, but that's life. So that's basically the change ends procedure all sorted. You can do half of that for your shutdown procedure. So if you just do what we did at the other end, that's all you need to do to shut the train down. Alrighty. Well, I hope that's given you a bit of a grounding in the Class 323, ready to drive it on the Manchester Glossop Hadfield line. If you've got any questions about how to handle the train or any comments, please drop them down below and I will try and help you out. Alright, thanks heaps for watching, give it a like and a subscribe and all that wonderful sorts of stuff, and we'll see you later. Bye now.